And welcome back to the Awakening, the inaugural, the Awakening World Truth Summit. I am your co-host, Kiri Lee Crawford, and as we continue to move our way through, of course, the event today, amazing words and thoughts and insights provided by our past speakers, and still more to go. And we're excited. Dr. Zelenko will, of course, grace us with his presence a little bit later on, and the brother of our Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau's brother, Kyle Kemper, his half-brother, will be here a little bit later as well. Reminding you that no one here gets paid. This is all volunteer business, all volunteer service. And so in order to continue to bring you these types of quality productions and these caliber of speakers and David Icke and the people who have graced, of course, our platform today, it's your support. We need your support. $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever's in your heart and within your capabilities, $100, whatever it is you feel, and the emphasis that you place upon the importance of being able to communicate what we are communicating and understanding what we're understanding at challenging and unprecedented times. But together, we can get through it. And as we talk about together, I'm really excited and even a little honored to have our next guest on. I'll share with you why. I want you to welcome alongside me, Mr. Vincent Gircys. Vincent, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks to have me on the show.
Great. Okay, so the founder of On Guard for Thee. Talk to the viewers about On Guard with Thee, what you're doing, and why you're doing it.
Well, really, at this point, I'm here to be clear. I belong to a number of organizations. I'm not the founder of that group. I do belong to that group, and I also belong to some organizations from the past. And I'm not here to talk on behalf of any organization. Mm-hmm. I'm really here to have a human-to-human conversation with your group. And I'll be presenting my perspectives rather than that of any other organization. That organization that you mentioned is working very diligently behind the scenes on some issues, but I've also been very vocal on these issues as well.
Okay, great. And the whole basis of why we're doing what we're doing is exactly for that. Just to provide people the types of insights and that they'd be able to develop a understanding that would allow them to make informed decisions, informed choices. There's a lot of information out there, sometimes difficult to make heads or tails of it. And so being able to speak with individuals who have profound and very specific insights as to whatever their particular area of expertise or understanding is, that's what we want to do, is just to talk to people, to get the information, to answer the questions that our viewers need, that parents and mothers and fathers and sons and daughters, they just want to know how to conduct themselves in the best possible way to, of course, to remain healthy, right, and to protect their loved ones. So again, I appreciate how you coined that, how you phrase that, and so talk a little bit about just your background and how you came to share your insight with us today.
Great, thank you. I do have a background in policing. I'm a retired member of the Ontario Provincial Police. I have been a member of that organization for 32 years. And what really brought this issue to my attention in my retirement is understanding the oath that I took as a police officer, the oath that we all took. In the province of Ontario, Canada, the oath is consistent with the Police Services Act, which is a document that really, they're the guiding principles of policing in this province and how we do policing. the oath and the Police Services Act are consistent, and they are also consistent with the Charter of Rights in Canada. And I find it very disturbing that these new mandates, these new laws that have come forward, are in complete conflict with our oath, with our Police Services Act, and with the Canadian Charter.
Absolutely. And, concerningly, and again, appreciating your time with us today, I feel sorry, just to put it frankly, that, our men and women and law enforcement and the first responders are made to be subjected to these circumstances. It's almost like they have a crosshairs on them. They are responsible for administering or for governing policy that it's unclear at best.
Well, I'd say it goes beyond that, and that is my opinion, that the officers are aware of what their oath is. And if they don't have their moral compass balanced. Understanding your oath, understanding the Police Services Act, which guides you to our charter, and understanding the charter itself were fundamental principles that we had to learn starting in 1982, which is the year that I graduated from the police college in Elmer, Ontario. And all officers in Ontario have to go through that same college and have to have a very good understanding of the Canadian Charter. We have to know what people's rights are so that we make sure we don't infringe upon them. And when we do infringe upon those rights from time to time, and it does happen, then we are reminded in the courts that those charges that we lay will immediately be withdrawn, because the courts do not tolerate any violation of that charter, or of the Canadian Charter. And likewise, I don't believe any Canadians would tolerate deviance from the charter. It gives us our founding legal principles. It is what makes us really, in a big way, who we are in terms of how we respect one another in the community, how we treat one another in the community. Those founding principles of understanding of the rights that we have and how we don't trample on those rights for anybody else. Now, there's a small provision in the charter that says the government may, when it demonstrates the necessity to suspend some of those rights. In my lifetime, it's never happened. And there has been no justification from the government as to why these rights are being infringed. There's no evidence to support the necessity. And there is, the oath that we take in the Police Services Act, these are not fluid documents. There's no room for negotiation. They are essentially stone that they are guidelines that we must follow. And now we're being provided with these medical mandates, which are totally contrary to the Charter, to the Police Services Act, and to our oath.
And clearly drawing the battle lines. And so you have policy being passed along that drastically contrasts or contradicts the founding principles of course, the 1982 Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We've spoke with several, of course, guests today, specifically on the freedom of assembly, the freedom of religious assembly, and things along these lines, and who clearly and obviously are experiencing issues. We've received citations or tickets, fines or whatnot because of these perceived violations. However, consistent with what you just said, there's a contrast, there's a contradiction. And so based on your 32-year tenure, and again, retired now, but your 32-year tenure with the Ontario Provincial Police, is there a suggested course of action, a resolution? Like, has it ever happened where policy and practice have butted heads like this?
Not to my knowledge in the last 32 years of police. Now, we do have agencies that our chiefs or commissioners would meet with, and that would be the Ontario Chiefs of Police, the Canadian Chiefs of Police. And if you want to call this a global issue, which it is, we have the International Chiefs of Police and other countries, other states, provinces around the world facing these similar issues. I would think, you would think, your listeners would think that the International Chiefs of Police would have a powwow and talk about this. You would think that in Canada, our chiefs would want to meet collectively to discuss this issue and how these laws are in contradiction to our charter. In fact, I wish you had the commissioner of the on your show. I wish you had any chief from any part of Ontario, any part of Canada on your show to explain this, because I don't understand it. The officers that I have spoken to don't understand it. And police officers do more than enforce the law. As the chief of Calgary Police had said after this skating rink incident where a boy was almost tasered because he was skating on the ice with too many people. And had his skates
cut off with a knife, apparently.
To that was, that's right. The chief's response to that was, I'm not using his exact words, but something to the effect of, well, our job is to enforce the law. I would say to that chief and to all the chiefs, our job as police officers are far greater than enforcing the law. We are the fabric. We are the guardians, I should say, of the fabric of society that keeps everything together in conflict. And this is my consideration is this is a betrayal of our oath and our necessity to maintain that fabric. It appears that our social structure is falling apart. There is division like I have never seen before. There is fear, tremendous amount of fear. And I'm very familiar with fear. It has been channeled in the right direction for me to save my life on several occasions. But I suggest to your listeners to take this fear now and channel it for the good, to give you strength and to pull you out of this.
Here. Interesting. You mentioned OPP Commissioner, not by name, Tom Carrique, who previously was Deputy Chief of Police with the York Regional Police. Amazing guy, great guy, and certainly we commend him and congratulate him on, on his relatively new position. I think it's been just a little more than a year now that he was named a commissioner of the Ontario Police Services. We definitely did invite him, but here's my question. Perhaps you might even have answered the question. Is it fear? People who have traditionally governed themselves, in a specific way, now departing from that governance and sort of adhering to protocols that are clearly in contrast to our Charter of Rights. And so do you think it's the political atmosphere, or why has it been such a drastic departing from what we're accustomed to? This just doesn't seem very Canadian, to be honest with you.
Now, that deviation that you talk about, is that your opinion?
I'm talking about opinion, yes. Yeah, I'm stating an opinion, yes.
Yeah, because it's my opinion as well. And I just wanted some clarification that I'm not the only one that thinks this way.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. And so
it's very disappointing. It's very, very disappointing for police officers that have approached me to discuss this issue, that they also seek that clarification. And to the best of my knowledge from conversations with individuals, I don't believe there has been clarification. And I'm under the impression from conversations and putting myself in that situation, if I were still working, which I am not in that capacity, the amount of stress that would bring on a working officer to have to try to, my best description of this is, if you're a responsible person and you find that the brakes are on your car and they're stuck and you can't get the brakes off, yet you may feel the need to accelerate at the same time to get to where you're going. I think most responsible people would say, there's a problem with the car, the brakes are stuck, I can't use the accelerator at this point. You really can't accelerate and brake at the same time. And that's how I equate this situation.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And just painting a very clear picture. And so, again, just your opinion, right? In respects to, there are amazing initiatives. One of those amazing initiatives, and the one that certainly grabbed our attention, was On Guard for Thee. And that is a collection of law enforcement or individuals within law enforcement that have chosen to take a second look at these new protocols. Or what is that organization about, and what's the mandate?
Well, I am a member of that organization. I don't speak for that organization until they wish me to do so.
Yes.
At this point, I would direct anyone watching this show to go to that Facebook channel, and all the information is there for them to see themselves as to what the directive is and what the position of that is. It is Police On Guard for Thee on Facebook, and there's quite a bit of information available there.
Okay, great. And I would think that maybe, Grant, we could even pull it up and have a look at that. Again, what I felt was most compelling is consistent with the dialogue that we're having now, is just the recognition that there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. That might be an understatement, but I'm going to stay middle of the road. A bit of a disconnect in respects to what the Charter of Rights and Freedoms mandates versus what COVID protocols mandate in respects to law enforcement. With the speakers that we've had today, they've all certainly conveyed concerns in respects to how they've been treated and how the COVID protocol stands to impact their constitutional rights. And that, of course, it seems to be at best convoluted. And so what we're hearing continually is just a confusion from people, from viewers about those regulations. And so from your seat, and again, retired, but still 32-year tenure is formidable, something that certainly I'm sure you've seen a lot and provided you a great deal of insight and knowledge. You said it, the chiefs of police coming together, having some conversation. What else humbly would you suggest?
What I would suggest to your viewers, I would suggest to your viewers is that they do their homework. They really do their homework. I find it best not to tell people what to do, but to suggest that if you do your homework and you become aware of the situation that we're facing, it is imperative upon you as a citizen, if you're trying to break out of this bewilderment of what's going on, to do your homework. And you really need to first, I believe, you need to get off of mainstream media. Mainstream media is not your friend. You're going to need to find out alternative sources of media. But therein lies the problem. There is an incredible amount of censorship that is going on right now, both
absolutely, I
will say, across the world and the Western world. It is terrible in the United States, and it is terrible here in Canada. So that is a starting point. If I were to point anybody in the direction of where I think they should go to look, two good sources that I would just recommend would be the Corbett Report. That is James Corbett of the Corbett Report, corbettreport.com. He is a Canadian publisher living in Japan, and I have been following his work for at least 5 years now. I find James Corbett quantifies every aspect of his work with his show notes. So everything he talks about has show notes referring to the data, and that's what you want. You want to go to an organization that's showing you the actual data. Another local Canadian newspaper that's come out recently, which is available for free online, is called druthers.net, www.druthers.net, and there's some very good stories there. But use that as a starting point. And from there, do your own homework, do your own research. And if you think something's wrong, and I believe something is wrong, I have done my homework. My friends have done their homework. And that will really help get you to a place of understanding. If you're going to follow mainstream media's narrative, then you're going to constantly believe the same mantra that I believe is false. And I don't know how else to spell it out other than you're never going to get out of that programming mindset if you continue to follow mainstream media.
And we've talked about whether, and we didn't want to speculate whether it was intentional or not intentional, 28% increase in net worth of the top 1% within North America. Something in the United States, that's something like to the effect of $4.1 trillion owned by the 1% of its citizens. And so my thing is, and this is what I want to ask you, in respects to qualifying what we're qualifying, the processes that you utilize or undertake to research, to vet, is there any? Is it common sense? Is there any particular criteria that you utilize, that you something that you seek, something that maybe it is even consistent with what you learned through your 32 years of policing? How do you qualify a piece of information?
It's a very good question. If you're going to do it based on emotion, don't do that because it's not fact. So you want something that is data supported, and then look for actual quotes made by individuals, again, supported, data supported. And that's what I look for. If you go to Stats Canada, if you go to some provincial or federal websites where they're dropping data on what's going on or utilizing that data to look at numbers, to compare numbers, those are good starting points because there's data. Also, if you're going to find news networks or online content creators that support and will always support data support their stories, they'll always quote where the information came from, and you'll eventually develop what you'll call trusted sources. And there certainly are a number of trusted sources out there. So I'd take you back to James Corbett. That was my start, and I'm very, very impressed with James Corbett. I always have been. When I was a forensic investigator, I still would find that when I compare my forensic investigating experience to the manner in which James Corbett presents, it's very similar in terms of where and how he sources his data and his facts. And he doesn't deviate that. He's always a very factual individual. So start there and then branch out.
No, I really appreciate you, because that is probably the number one request or question that we get. It's not people challenging a piece of information or an opinion. It's usually about how to qualify. How does one go about qualifying? Where's the link, or what is the source to which you drew that deduction? I always say that a great many people, we hear 37% of the news or the facts 100% of the time. So we think we're making an informed decision, an informed choice, but it's actually only predicated on that 37%. There's a whole nother side to the story and to the equation. And so along that same line that we're talking about, as a former forensic investigator, and of course citing the practice, the means that you undertake, is that the same advice that you provide for maybe your colleagues, your friends, past colleagues that are still in law enforcement? Do they have the same challenges? And I'm just asking your opinion, that the general public has in respects to making these determinations. Like, I feel sorry, so I'm wondering what that looks like.
Yes, they do. They equally face the same challenges, and that's as a result of intensely suppressed media. because you're not getting both sides of the story. And when we're talking about sources of data and where to look for data, another commonality that they seem to have is they all seem to get pulled off of social media very quickly. So when you're hearing a narrative supported by data, whether it's with the voice of thousands of doctors coming forward on an issue, when you start to see that data get suppressed, when you start to see it get pulled, and it'll pop up somewhere else and it'll get pulled very quickly. When these types of stories are suppressed, stories by scientists, doctors, professionals, you have to start asking yourself, why is there this much suppression from professional individuals trying to get a story out, trying to get a message out that is contrary to the current narrative? It just begs the question of why. Why is that happening? And it's up to you as an individual to look at that and decide for yourself. Decide for yourself, why is this happening? Why is it that I'm following a certain source? I find the information interesting. I find it to be factual. I find it to be data supported. And very quickly it's pulled. And it needs to go to another location. It finds another parking spot, and then it's pulled from that spot. That's very telling.
I couldn't agree more. And again, it does beg the question, why? And so, that being what it is, I'm really curious that, 70s baby. So we used to say, the way we grew up was, Bob Marley, Bob Seger, or Bob and Doug McKenzie. It was all good. It was what it felt like to be Canadian, right? That it was whatever mood, whether we went to go play hockey and we wore our Wayne Gretzky, 99 jersey, Edmonton Oilers, or if we were playing basketball and wanted to be Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan. The point I'm making is that we were just all Canadian. We were together. And so we've increasingly seen a division within, certainly communities. If you want to talk ethnically, certainly social and economically, just certain forms of division. Now, 2020 was a challenge for law enforcement in many senses of the word. The whole defund the police campaign, which we think is absolute nonsense. But I'm not going to speak to that at this time. That's not the platform for that conversation. But I'm just wondering, the pressure, and just your opinion, the pressure to go into certain communities where the perception is that the service differs based on social economics and ethnicities. What do you think about that? And what would you say to even officers that are charged with that responsibility?
I don't think that problem really is that great here in Canada. I think that problem exists in certain cities within the U.S. More predominantly. I don't see it happening that badly in Canada. But that said, I don't disagree that there is tremendous division over the last year, maybe over the last 6 months. There's tremendous division that's taking place. And I chalk that up to individuals who follow a mainstream narrative approach, being fed CP24, nonstop banner screening of a continuous bombardment. And I'll give you a quick story on that. I had to make a visit to our local hospital a few weeks ago. And while I'm sitting in the waiting room, I look up, and on the television in the corner is CP24 playing nonstop, continuous bombardment of how the hospitals are overrun, how badly the situation is. I have quite a few friends and relations in the healthcare field.
Yes.
And they're telling me a different story.
Yes.
And I'm sitting in the room at this particular hospital, and I don't see a big problem. But again, that is no measure of accuracy of what's really going on across the province or the country. But various alternative news sources are feeding video data from a hospital just reported to have been overrun A few hours later, an individual pulls up in the parking lot, walks through with his camera, and can't find anybody there, and is saying, where's the problem? You said you're triaging in the parking lot. Where's the problem? And I see this story over and over again. So you have to ask the question, there's different data sets. There's what you're seeing on the mainstream media, and you really should not use mainstream media news as a data set. It's information being provided, but it's not backed up on anything. It's nothing more than a story. So if somebody's going to present some information, there should be some numbers behind it. And case numbers are not the numbers of any significance. Case numbers just mean you test positive for something, and the test, in order to produce a positive result, is somewhere between 50 to 95% inaccurate. So we need to really, why aren't we looking at different metrics of data? Why aren't we looking at total deaths to date as of from January 1st and compare that to last year and compare them? Yeah.
No, and I mean, I couldn't agree more. And that's why we wanted to kind of sit and chat with you, because just to get a diversity of opinion and insight from different walks of both the beautiful world that we live in, and certainly those within our country that, like yourself, have served extensively, 3 decades of service in law enforcement, and the insights garnered subsequent from that. So certainly we appreciate you for taking this time out. Got a couple minutes left. Maybe just a parting note from you. Thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience.
I would. And my parting note is going to be this, that I wish for all Canadians, and I'm sure they agree with me, I wish that on both sides of this spectrum, Canadians could learn to be mature enough to sit down and have a mature conversation with each other.
Yes.
This destruction and difference of polarization that we're having within the community on these issues. If we could just have a mature conversation with one another, instead of shutting down the opposition, shutting down the other person, just not wanting to know, not wanting to talk about it. That's what we really need. We just need to be able to have a mature conversation. And it's something that is very difficult for most people. And I don't know how we're going to do that, but that's what we need to have. Beyond that, I would just say to people, I am available if people need to contact me, assuming you want to have something constructive to say, or if it's a police officer looking out to contact me. I could be made available on my Facebook page, Vincent Gircys, or I can also be reached through Proton Mail at CanadianOathkeeper@protonmail.com.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate the service you provide. A lot of people, like you said, are afraid, a lot of fear, even more people confused. So anytime we have the opportunity to share insights and support systems that help the most vulnerable members of our society, of our beautiful country as well, those people who are charged with the service and protection of those marginalized or challenged individuals, we certainly support that wholeheartedly. We're always here. You have anything going on, and certainly please just give us a call, and we'd love to support what you're doing. An amazing initiatives, and we appreciate you. All the best. Wishing you for 2021.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Thanks, Vincent. Of course, Vincent Gircys, retired 32-year veteran with the Ontario Provincial Police. Really interesting dialogue echoed. It's amazing when you can have different people from different walks of life in different professions saying the exact same thing. And sentiments in respects to what I call the weapons of mass misinformation, that the mass propagation that we see. Don't judge. We simply suggest humbly to look for alternate sources to qualify what is being reported, and certainly to be very wary of services that do not provide statistical analysis data. All right. They want to push numbers of infected while at the same time not talking about survival rates. and 99.9% survival rate on COVID-19 present. Of course, we are experiencing the first ever, the Awakening World Truth Summit. We still have more to come, including up next is the half-brother of the Prime Minister of Canada, Carl Kempler. He's going to be here as well. Dr. Zelenko, and we do have some medical questions that we really want to explore, some thoughts, theories, concerns, vaccines and viruses and mRNA and compounds. We're going to talk about that. Fact versus fiction. We got that and more. And reminding you to the hashtag is World Truth Summit. Get online, social media, have your say, ask your questions, provide your insights. I don't think it's about whether we agree necessarily as it is the importance of us having the conversation. Let's talk. Let's have some dialogue is what Simone J. Smith would say. But we have that dialogue that those who know better, they do better. Those who know less, they do less. It's not knowledge, but knowledge applied. That is power. It is the World Truth Summit. I'm Kirby Crawford. We'll be back with more after these.
This is a message to all the veterans and those that are currently in service. We recognize that the freedoms that we currently enjoy were not actually free, but paid by the cost of your sacrifices in the name of liberty. We thank you for everything you have given us and are grateful to know that people like you put their well-beings on the line every day in the protection of these values.